Okay, I think we'll get started here. We'll do a screen share and then we'll begin the presentation. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening to join us on the Golden Castle Informative Gathering. Our itinerary today, we're going to go through some introductions, introduce myself, Gnome, the founder of Coho BC. Also, Terry and Peter, the sellers of the Golden Castle, are here with us tonight. Very grateful that they were able to attend. Next, we'll be discussing the innovation and the vision of the property and the opportunity. 4, we'll unpack Coho BC, and we'll let Gnome take over regarding how to structure a co-purchasing transaction. And then we'll open the floor to questions and collaboration. And now, if anybody does have any questions or comments throughout the entire evening, just raise your hand, pop in, interrupt me at any time. We'd love to hear your feedback. You have a question right now? Yeah, Michael, go for it.
Unmute. Yeah, Hoochie. I apologize for interrupting your presentation. This isn't what we thought we were coming for. I apologize. We actually have no investment capital. We were looking for a community that we would co-create, yes, but we currently do not have any venture or any capital.
That's totally valid. I think, more than welcome to stay. I think it would be advantageous for you to stay.
Alrighty. I'll mute
Yeah.
myself. I'll shush. I apologize. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, cheers. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Scott Miller. I'm a real estate agent in Nelson, BC with the brokerage EXP. I highly value innovation and collaboration. In the world today, things are, challenging when it comes to the Canadian real estate market for a lot of folks. This is why Terry and Peter and Noam and we came together and we saw an opportunity. We decided to team up and we came together with a vision for the Golden Castle. And I'm acting as the listing agent for this collaborative orchestration, let's call it that. And I've also teamed up with Gnome as a member of Coho BC. If you want to learn more about the services that I offer, feel free to go to scottmillerrealty.ca. Gnome, if you want to speak a little about yourself and what you offer.
Hello, thank you, and thanks for bringing us together again. So yeah, I am a real estate agent based out of Vancouver, but with my specialty in co-ownership, I work across the province and created this organization, Coho BC, the Collaborative Home Ownership Initiative, that basically supports groups across the province who are looking to buy and acquire property together to help them not just on the real estate side in the acquisition of a property that's appropriate for that, but also on helping to create the social, financial, and legal structures that would underpin such a relationship. And then we also help with people wanting to resell shares in those type of projects, and creating this alternative marketplace for co-ownership, which we like to say creates better housing for less money. And so that's where we come from. To speak to Michael and your partner there, I'll just say that, this is one piece of a much larger puzzle on trying to create better housing broadly, right? Better, more communal and collective, more environmentally sustainable, more financially sustainable. And there is a lot of interplay between these co-ownership spaces and some of the co-op and rental models, and some of these larger communities, could be partially ownership, partially rental models, things like that. And I worked with one project in Horseshoe Bay that did an interesting little kind of in between. Everyone who's a member there had to have some investment capital, but even though a share would have been about $250,000 a person, people were able to buy in from as low as 50,000 up to 500,000, and there were outside investors creating pathways for folks to kind of to get in. So they were able to own at a much lower price point than you could ever buy in Vancouver, and then that entitled you to rent a piece. So there's a lot of creative ideas, and one of the beauties of Terry and Peter approaching myself and approaching Scott and people who think outside the box with this property is that they really want to facilitate a community on the property, from what I can understand, and are open to some interesting models like vendor financing and other things like that to create pathways that allow for more affordability. So delighted to have anybody here, no matter what their capacity. And if this isn't the right fit, it's certainly part of a movement of stuff, and that hopefully we can help find anybody the right community at some sort of price they can afford or create. So that's me. You'll hear my presentation a little later on how co-ownership works, how we do protect you legally and socially in that. But delighted to be invited out and to be part of this project.
Thank you, Noam. Next, wanted to introduce Terry and Peter, who are here tonight. So Terry and Peter, would you want to say a little bit about yourselves?
Hello, hello. Firstly, I just wanted to say, Noam, that was very well said and just so spot on as to why we really resonated with both yourself and Scott and what you're doing for this movement. As you said, it is a movement. There's a lot of things going on in the world that's showing this degenerative society. And if we're not looking at regenerating and bringing our resources together, offering flexibility, these things are not going to go very well for anybody. Rather, Scott, we just wanted to bring up, we rather not be looked at or seen as the sellers. We really want to express the guardianship that Peter and I took, and we honor that. And we brought this space to life within 8 years. We had this concept of living off the land ourselves. We left the corporate world, we left the city, we renounced a lot of things, and we said we're going to become self-sustainable. And the only way to do it is get yourself into the country and get away from the city. And we said, okay, this is going to be the project. We both come from the alternative health field. We both have been in the wellness space in various aspects, whether we're setting up businesses or consulting, or we're selling supplements, or we're building retreat centers or fitness studios. That's the space we've come from, and we live a very holistic life because of it. We also found that, with that said, we wanted to get out of the city, Peter and I. We came here to this beautiful spot, nestled in this valley, amazing community. And we decided we were going to commit ourselves to creating this wellness concept, and start really repurposing our lives and stop becoming so dependent on this system that we've been coming from, leaving that world of dependency and consumerism, and even just not allowing ourselves to grow in this space, and learning how to be in community and start learning how to collaborate. There's a lot of amazing people in this area, and a lot of people in the cities that are busting to get out of the cities. So one thing we found with this project, we call it a Golden Castle because Peter and I really wanted to bring more of a platform for people here that could live in this space, collaborate. Do you have to have a lot of investment? We realize that there may not be a lot of capital for anybody these days as far as what's happening to the world. but there might be a lot of opportunity to provide your service and your skills and your stewardship and your willingness to do something and make that change. Peter and I are really open to, we're looking for people that want to repurpose, things in their lives, and they want to steward the land. Food sovereignty is a big deal. We created this project outside the landscape. There was nothing on this property other than the castle. So 8 years, we said, okay, we're going to develop our food sovereignty, our systems. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have an indoor grow room, so we can grow food all year round. We can grow our medicine all year round because we choose to be self-sovereign, self-sufficient. And that's the model we want to put out there, because more and more people are hungry for this platform, hungry for a group or a community or a project or a place that is already doing it, but yet they just don't know how. They may not have the resources to invest. So we said, okay, we're going to give back of service. We're going to do this. We're going to commit, and then we're going to open it up. So fast forward 8 years, we're now saying, hey, let's collaborate, let's regenerate, and let's figure out how we're going to move this piece. The transformation is upon us. We are all waking up to this change. Even a real estate agent like yourself and Noam, for example, the new way of selling property is the old way as far as I'm concerned. We have to be very open to this change. And I think for the most part, we're really, really happy with moving this to a collaboration and start looking at the essence of stewardship versus the burden of ownership. And that's what the energy is. So I put out all that energy on Facebook, and we want to attract the right people. So I don't want people to feel like they're, if they don't have a capital investment, that there's not an opportunity. There's opportunity for everybody. We're just going through just an open introduction, and we'll see how it goes. I think it's just open discussion because everything needs to start changing as far as what I see. I probably am rambling on now. Peter, did you have anything to add to
I think
that?
that's really good. I don't really know how much more I could say on that. Why don't you continue on with your
Sorry.
introduction there, Scott? And if I have anything else to add, I'll jump in.
Yeah, beautifully said. I really want to echo that, innovation and change is really at the forefront of opportunity right now. I think, a lot of people don't recognize how high of a caliber of an impact shifting the way that we think and the way that we are approaching some of the most fundamental aspects of the way that we've been living for hundreds of years potentially now in the world. So let's discuss what's on offer. Let me just move this ahead. So some of the property details. What is it? Where is it? So 8751 Highway 6. This property is located tucked away between the village of Slocan and Silverton. It's surrounded by the beautiful Valhalla Provincial Park. It's over 18 acres of unzoned land. And that's really important. I really want to point that out, and we'll get into that a little later on in the presentation, why unzoned land is so desirable. It's only 5 minutes from a popular Slocan Lake in Bannock Point. It's an hour from Nelson. It's just under an hour to the Castlegar Airport, but also the Kelowna and the Spokane Airport are international airports, which are just a few hours away as well. So that we really want to point out as well, that this property is very private and rural, and only a few hours away can you access an international airport to access the greater world. The main residence is over 6,500 square feet, 7-bedroom. The main home utilizes a multitude of different utilities, geothermal. There's a wood-fired boiler. There's wood stoves. So there's multiple ways to heat and cool the home. So we'll get into that a little later as well. There's a 30-foot yurt all season on the property. And when it comes to water, there's two different sources, a well and water license from up the mountain. Wanted to discuss equity and capital. So what's the value of this on paper? So as we were crunching the numbers, Terry and Peter and I, we were looking at what would it cost to rebuild this property as is? And it would be well over 5 million. So in context, this property is listed at right now 1.97. However, the rebuild value is more than double that. So that delta is rather large. Therefore, it's quite apparent the value that you're getting when many individuals come together and contribute a small amount, or in different ways that we can collaboratively orchestrate to acquire something that has a huge amount of value, to rebuild at least 5 million, right? With all the outbuildings, with the greenhouse, the grow rooms, the infrastructure. It's very well designed. And, in the past 8 years, Terry and Peter have put in tons of sweat equity. The sellers own the property outright. Terry and Peter own it outright. And this is important for vendor financing, which we'll unpack a little later. There's over $350,000 worth of chattels, they're called. So non-fixed items that are negotiable with the sale. So in other words, farm equipment, tools, irrigation. It's not very often that sellers are willing to negotiate or leave a lot of the items. A lot of the times when people sell a property, they'll take items with them. However, there is a creative offering with the chattels or equipment for this sale. The property has the potential to be off-grid. So I wanted to discuss this and ensure that people understand that I know when I've looked into properties like this for myself, both personally and professionally for my clients, I've always romanticized the off-grid property, and I highly value my on-grid property as well. So what's the best? In my opinion, the hybrid system, right? So if one system goes down, you have the other and vice versa. This property has that. With the multiple geothermal systems, wood fire boiler, wood fireplace, multiple forms of heat, electric generator backup, multiple sources of water. This is a very ideal opportunity for self-sustainability. There's also an all-season greenhouse worth $55K at least, all permitted, exceptionally built. And there's also grow rooms. Let me see here. It'll come up in the next photo. Yeah, worth over 40K. This will allow these indoor grow rooms was there 3, Terry and Peter, I believe, that will allow for year-round growing, which is very ideal.
Yeah, 3 rooms, 3 rooms.
Yeah. Next, I wanted to unpack how the unzoned aspect of this offering is so ideal. Other zoning types have dwelling limits, right? So in rural property in the West Kootenay area, typically country residential is what most property is zoned as. So country residential has limitations such that you can only have an additional dwelling per hectare if it's separated by a floor or wall, which effectively means the only way you can add another dwelling is to have a duplex, which is absolutely not ideal. However, with this property, it being unzoned, you can have effectively as many dwellings as you want, still within the rules and regs of the BC Building Code and within setback boundaries. But effectively, you could have many dwellings all over this property. When I talk to other real estate agents in different areas around BC, they drool at what we have in the West Kootenays. It's a whole layer of bureaucracy that's not there. You have what's called an official community plan, but you don't have a zoning rule or reg that you have to abide by. So there's more sovereignty, more freedom, a greater ability to create the dwelling and community that you desire. Now, here's the listing video that I want to play for everybody. We'll go through it together here. So this is a bird's eye view coming into the property. As you can see, only a small portion of the land is being utilized currently. There's so much room for growth, so much room for expansion. The ground and earth is very arable, growable. This is us walking into the residence. Revealed aggregate concrete floors. A beautiful yoga space here, ideal for yoga workout space. This is my favorite room in the whole house, the kitchen, ideal for cooking for 2 or a community en masse. The view looks at Mount Denver, which is absolutely gorgeous, looking out the window as you're washing dishes. And then next, the living room or the main offset dining space, vaulted ceilings, fireplace, beautiful curved tile work. The builder of this home was an exceptional craftsman. You can tell that they really put their heart and soul into it. This is the primary bedroom. There is a balcony just off the side. There's Mount Denver right there. This is the upper loft, ideal for meditation, a music room. It's the upper bathroom, exceptional tile work, all custom. This is the yurt, beautiful space, could be used as a dwelling or a community, ceremony, or gathering space. And again, beautifully located just off of Slocan Lake. This is the Medicine Circle, a beautiful gathering location for community. These are some night shots. The stars at night without any light pollution in these areas is just gorgeous. And at the end of this presentation, what I'll do is we'll send you an email, and within it, we'll give you the listing links so that you can see both the listing video and 3D virtual tour so that you can see this opportunity with a finer tooth comb yourself. Now bear with me, we're going to load what's called a 3D virtual tour here. So again, we'll send you this link. It's really amazing that technology has granted us the ability to provide prospective buyers or contributors to properties the ability to virtually walk through a space. So with software, we're able to experience the home and the space before actually being there physically. When we scanned the property, we took the cameras out into the outdoors. So when you walk through the property, ensure that you walk through the exits so you can see the outside. Another thing I wanted to showcase about how amazing this software is if you're unsure if, you know, a certain piece of equipment or if your king size mattress would fit or not, you can hit on the bottom left here corner, measurement mode, which allows you to measure the space. So this opening, for example, 5'7" right? So it's a very interactive tool that allows people to experience, measure, and utilize experiencing the property without being there physically yet. I'll just close this. Next, I wanted to unpack the year-round growing opportunity of the Golden Castle. So I think this is one of the most amazing aspects of this opportunity, which is the permaculture and the regenerative farming. So the gardens that have been established are absolutely beautiful. There's 1,000 square foot greenhouse that has water and power, all permitted. We have all the documentation. There's multiple heated grow rooms for year-round growing. That's this building here that you see on the right. The doors are accessible from the other side. Within it, you have LED grow lights. So you'll be able to grow whatever you want at any time of year. Terry and Peter have created a walk-in cooler or fridge that's integrated into the bottom corner of the Golden Castle, which, yeah, you guys, I've seen when I walk in, I've stored a ton of food in there, which is beautiful and delicious. There's the dedicated water well and water license, which we touched on, and then also an integrated irrigation system. The yurt I wanted to touch on again. The yurt is, in my opinion, so beautiful. I'm sure everyone in here has been in round spaces, and it really creates a confluence, or the energy really focuses in the middle, which is, yeah, a very ideal space for community gathering, or if anybody's attended ceremony or medicine ceremony, very beautifully orchestrated in a round room. This fireplace, I'm not sure if you guys had this, Terry or Peter, or if this was here prior, but it's beautiful. When we took the
No.
video,
I scored on Marketplace.
yeah, you did.
I did.
That's
I
cool.
sent Peter out to, I don't know where, but I said, that is going in the year. We wanted to replace what was in there, which was propane, and we did not like propane. We didn't like the smell, toxic. It looked ugly from the outside. And so that was our last year project. We did that last year. We brought her in.
Very nicely done, and it radiates the heat. When
It's
we were doing the
gorgeous.
shoot, yeah, it's gorgeous. And so not only is there a wood fire stove in there, but there's also, you'll see the baseboards under each of the windows. So there's multiple supplemental types of heat, right? There's running water, there's flushable toilets. You can't really see it, but on the left, there's a little kitchenette and then a bathroom with a shower. So it's a completely, you know, utilizable dwelling for somebody on the property. Now I'd like to discuss vendor financing. Vendor is a word that's synonymous with seller. So, oh, sorry, I realized there's an error there. But so with vendor financing, what's so amazing about it is that we can not have the middleman, leaving the banks out of it. Why is this so favorable? I'm not sure if anyone's ever looked at a mortgage agreement, but the rules and regs of signing a mortgage document are thick. There's limitation on prepayment amounts. It's very bank centric. The amount of money that a bank will make off of a mortgage is massive, right? By having vendor financing, what this means is that buyers can lend directly from the sellers, or rather, buyers and sellers each get a lawyer and they formulate a legal agreement. And Noam can unpack this a little bit more. Noam has way more experience than I in creating this type of transaction, where with this financial agreement, you're just, as the buyer, paying the sellers over a certain period of time, an amortization or term, until the interest off title from the sellers is gone. So in other words, it's a much simpler agreement. It's favorable because it can be created in a mutually beneficial way for all parties involved.
And I'll just add at this moment that, I mean, one of the big draws is that the banks have, have these qualifications where you have to qualify for higher than the actual interest rate, right? The stress test, they call it. And so many folks can actually afford more than they can qualify for. The banks also insist on joint and several liability, which means even though your portion of a loan might only be $100,000, you're still responsible for the full 1.5 million. Everyone is on the title. And there's just a lot of these kind of, and qualifying for financing as a new corporate entity that the buyer group would probably be in this case is a very difficult thing to do at what tend to be high commercial interest rates. So yeah, by bypassing the banks, not only is it more community minded and more, hopefully a fairer relationship between lender and borrower, it's also much better for a group qualifying. And it's not going to ruin your credit score. You can actually qualify for what you can afford, right? I mean, we don't want you agreeing to paying more than you can afford. But there's a lot of different ways that this can really benefit and make a deal like this happen, where it otherwise might not be able to come together.
I'll only touch on this briefly, but Terry and Peter and I have been talking about this, about how cryptocurrency is becoming more and more relevant and valuable in today's day and age. Terry and Peter are open to cryptocurrency as a form of payment. So I've done 2 deals now, one on the buying side, one on the selling side, involving Bitcoin and Ethereum. So lawyers structure what's called a barter deal, where a transaction can occur as long as there's fair consideration, whether it's goats, wines, real estate, tools, cash dollars, or cryptocurrency. As long as there's fair consideration between all parties involved, transaction can occur and title can be registered, right? So a small portion or a percentage of every transaction will need to be in Canadian fiat dollars. This would go to brokerage fees, property transfer tax, GST, if it is applicable. However, the bulk of the principal payment can be in Bitcoin, for example. So we just wanted to express this to ensure that everyone's aware that if you or anyone you know has Bitcoin and is interested in an opportunity like this, please let us know. And then Noam, here's where, if you wanted to take over, discussing co-ownership and what's involved with a multi-party acquisition.
Fantastic. Thank you for the background on the property, and Terry and Peter for your vision in creating this property and in offering this up to the community. I got involved when Terry and Peter reached out to me and told me what they were envisioning, and then I looked at their property and I was blown away by the potential this property has. There's a lot of different ways it can come together, and that's going to depend on who steps up and identifies themselves as wanting to create this community. But the obvious pathway that for me that jumped out because of the lack of zoning was some sort of tiny home co-housing community where in this graphic you have something like 24 different little pads, all with shared access to this 6,000 square foot, 6,500 square foot home, the yurt, the growing space. And that space really allows for the ability to have offices, guest suites, collective space, kids spaces, maybe rental spaces, right, in the house itself too, or some of the pads could be rental pads. It really goes in line with the vision of co-housing, which is a whole other presentation, a whole other conversation. But the idea that we're living far too much in isolation, and that we don't need that much individual living space. We can live in our tiny house, especially if we have access to all of these shared resources, both socially, environmentally, and economically, right? Triple bottom line sustainability. This would be a pathway forward. So it really makes that living in 300, 250, 300 square feet much more feasible. It doesn't have to be all things to you at all times. You don't have to keep a room that's entirely for laundry, keep a room that's entirely for an office, keep a room that's entirely for guests, keep a room that's entirely for your TV, whatever it might be. Because you have access to all that stuff in a shared environment. So that's where I got brought in saying, hey, this property has amazing potential due to the size and layout of the house. I mean, that yurt, that yoga space, that giant fridge, the huge kitchen, the huge living room, right? It's what people build when they build co-housing spaces. They basically build this house and then a bunch of other houses next to it. It's like, this has already been built. All we got to do is bring in, build the infrastructure, the tiny home pads, let people bring in their tiny homes. And if we can get 20 or so people involved, I mean, that brings, even assuming a full outright purchase, forgetting about vendor financing and other like that. But if we can, at 20 different groups involved, that brings the price point down to $100,000 per person on average, at least, depending on how we structure it, right? Which really is in the scheme of real estate investing, is lower than you can find anything else out there. Let's put it that way. Certainly access to this much acreage. I mean, 20 people, in theory, you're getting an acre. You're not getting an acre, you're getting share in 18 acres. But imagine an acre of land, access to 6,000 square feet for $100,000. It's just unheard of. So this was clearly was like, all right, let's make this happen. Let's get this off the ground. And so and so again, the final vision could be, there's a lot of different ways it could be. The yurt could be a living space. The main house could be living spaces. There's 7 bedrooms in there, right? So it doesn't have to be a tiny home living. It could be a collective living setup of some sort. You don't have to do tiny homes. You could theoretically build full secondary houses on the property, although the economics of that shift. So there's a lot of possibility to go through. So that's what brought me involved, and that's where we want to present this vision, and then the process basically is that I would work with you to help create this vision, to find the other partners. This is the second info session that we've held, and we've had about 5 or 6 folks from the first info session who said, yes, tell me more, I'm really interested. So we pulled together a core group of 5-10 people to start. We build out a vision, we'd spread the word and try to build up our community till we have whatever we need, depending on our model, number of serious interested parties. So going on, Scott, if you could flip the slide. So why have I specialized in co-ownership, or why do I see co-ownership as the pathway for a property like this? clearly because you can live, in better housing for less money. I think I said that earlier, right? You can build community and mutual support systems. You can know your neighbors. You're not just moving into some standard, renting an apartment or buying an apartment somewhere, and everyone's doing their own thing. Affordability. There's no way anyone could have access to 6,000 square feet of space on 18 acres for between $100,000 and $200,000. Otherwise, it's just impossible. So you get more space and access to these resources. In this case, you get access to farmland, right? The ability, if you want to set up a little farming business, there's definitely the ability to bring not just residential vision to this property, but farming vision, maybe retreat center vision, holistic healing, turning spaces into those kind of I mean, it's a little bit isolated, I guess, but maybe if you create, multi-day retreat, examples, and there's also even isolated, there's people in the area who would come to a place like this to seek treatment, I would assume. So yeah, a lot of potential in that front. You can live in otherwise unavailable locations, right? So again, when are you going to get a chance to live on acreage like this, on a farm like this, at this price point? Higher quality and unique alternative forms of housing. I think it's pretty obvious by the presentation. Financial synergy, and this is kind of what that the presentation on vendor financing was about a little bit, right? Is because of the partnership between the current stewards and the future stewards. There is a way to create a model where you couldn't otherwise create a pathway that we could create there. And also by coming together, as I said earlier, sometimes, people with more financial ability, people with less financial ability can come together and create pathways that wouldn't exist for anybody otherwise. So we do see a lot of that. And as I said, sorry. And as I said, I really like to see this as a triple bottom line sustainable choice. This kind of housing is the most socially, financially, and environmentally sustainable choice that you can make in terms of your housing. Continuing on. So co-ownership is more popular than most people imagine. I mean, it's been going on for years. I mean, if not generations and eons. But people have been co-buying, setting up co-ops, doing land shares, certainly since the 70s and well before. But back then it was a small fraction of the population. Even when I started Coho about 8 years ago, we saw, 5 to 10%, depending on how you ask the question, of people would consider co-ownership. And now the surveys that are out here show that between 25 to 50% of Canadians, depending how you ask the question, look at co-ownership as a viable pathway. And we are certainly seeing that even higher, I think, in places like the Kootenays, where people are looking for, I mean, everywhere looking for affordability, but they also have a strong back to the land ethic and a strong collective ethic. So this is not some fringe idea. It's a newer version of an old idea. And really one of Coho's goals is to professionalize this type of system so that you're not just a bunch of friends doing it together and hoping for the best and then realizing 20 years down the road that or even 5 years, you've got a problem. It's making sure you have the right, community vision and community guidelines, the right fiscal structure, and the right legal structure to set you up for success so that when somebody wants to leave the arrangement, they can resell their share without too much difficulty. That if there's disputes, they can be resolved easily, things of that nature. Continuing on. So this is what I just said. So that's why we want to get you prepared. Strong legal structure, community structure, financial structure, and then of course finding the right partners and the right property. And fortunately, in this case, the right property came to us, and so now we're just on this search to find the right partners. So Coho has a mix of lawyers, mediators, financiers, matchmakers, realtors, kind of everybody with experience on this front. So Scott would guide the current stewards through their part of the relationship. I would guide the new stewards through into the acquisition from a real estate perspective and from the visioning perspective, but then also connect you with the right lawyers and the right accountants and things like that to actualize the full structure. Continuing on. And so just so you understand, because the biggest question people have is the financial. How do I make sure that my partner is not gonna, take me down financially and legally? What's the legal underpinning? What am I owning? And how do I deal with resale? How do I deal with disputes? So that's where the legal contract really comes in. And your partnership agreement, or in this case, it'd probably be a shareholders agreement, covers a range of topics that, again, I would help the buyer group create a vision on, and then we would connect you with lawyers to put into proper legalese. But that's financing. How much money is everyone bringing, or what's their ongoing contributions? What does that get you in terms of percentage of ownership? Now, what form of ownership would this take? Which is always an interesting question. Would it be corporate? Would it be co-op? Would it be tenants in common? Bare trust? And I won't go into those details now. It's a whole different presentation. But probably in this case, it'd be shares in a corporation, probably the most likely solution. So just creating that vision. What is the purpose and vision for the community, right? Is it just housing, or is it a regenerative community where we're trying to, with a strong organic farming or whatever, sustainable farming outputs? Do we want to have a certain ideology around level of community or not? Are we going to set rules around, and this comes down further down, set rules around, quiet hours, smoking, animals, slaughtering of animals, all these kind of things that will guide how the community operates. What would be everyone's roles and responsibilities for your and your rights? Private rights to your own space, but some sort of responsibility and shared rights to collective space. Keep going on. There's a lot that goes into this, and again, the point here is not that you learn all these things now, but that you see that we will take you through understanding all of these pieces so that you feel confident in the purchase before you finalize it. What are the rules I referenced? Delinquency, right? What happens if someone doesn't follow through on their payment? In the case of a financing, or just their monthly costs for general upkeep and maintenance and pad and things like that. So you put policies in place where we will support each other for a period of time, but after a period of time, it becomes a forced sale of their share, where we can make sure the rest of the group can recoup that money and protect themselves against that. Sometimes there's penalties that you associate with that, again, to protect everybody from one person or a few people bringing financial challenges to the whole group. What is the social framework? And what's the decision-making structure? Are we using sociocracy? Are we using majority or supermajority? Are we, those sort of things? Conflict resolution. Again, when we bring in an outside mediator, or when we use a majority vote if we can't come to consensus. And then a lot of exit strategies and worst case scenario planning. So what happens when one party wants to leave? What happens when someone dies? What happens if a couple divorces? What happens if someone gets financial trouble? What happens if someone needs to move to Ontario? What happens if the building burns down? And how do we going to choose to rebuild? Will we rebuild the community as is, or would we change the structure? Most importantly, ensuring that we maintain proper insurance if possible on the building. All those sort of questions would all come into this process of outlining everything, so that we can have the decisions made now in advance to give everyone confidence in the model they're buying into, and so that most of the big decisions can be made when everyone is lovey-dovey and getting along and excited, and not at those worst possible moments when someone's sick, or someone's dying, or someone's divorcing, or someone's fighting. You don't want to be trying to work out these details then. You want to work them out well in advance. So yeah, you can switch back to that last slide. So basically, my job here would be to organize a buyer group and to help you guys through that visioning process, and then through the legal acquisition of the process, of the property, the offer writing, and all that traditional real estate side of it. So if you feel like this is the right path for you, please do reach out to me, and so you make sure that you're aware of when we start to pull together the visioning meetings and trying to pull this off the ground. So we already have a number of people who have expressed interest in that. So we'll be having, I think we have a date for it already. Maybe have that in a future slide, Scott. But we will be having We're having an on-site tour on September 28th for people to come and see the property and fall in love with it, and even meet each other a little more in person. And then we will start that formation process of really getting the interested parties together. And just want to say, like, this stuff works. It works. So you can do this with strangers, and we are, right, putting together with strangers around a vision, around a property. But these projects are most successful when people draw on their peer and social network to fill it out. So, you know, I encourage you guys, if this is a vision of yours, if you think this is a beautiful thing, to talk it up with your friends. Maybe they're not themselves interested, but they'll know other people are interested, and just spread the word and help us build the community. Because to pull this off, again, it depends on what we create, but we'll probably need somewhere between, you know, 8 and 20 people coming together to make it happen. And so any help you can give, if you think you're one of them, but you know, please spread the word to others and bring them to this. As you probably saw, this video is being recorded. We also have a recording of the previous session. Scott is also always happy to answer questions about the property. He clearly has fallen in love with the property and loves it. And I'm always here to answer questions about co-ownership and how those things work. So that's really the next step. Is if you see yourself in here, join us on the 28th to tour the property. Join us at the next meeting after that, which we do have a date for already, but anyways, I'll find it, to start the formation. And then just tell everyone you know about this exciting opportunity, and see if we can bring more people in to make this actually happen.
Thank you so much, Noam. Beautifully said. Yeah, I just wanted to open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions, comments about the opportunity, next steps, or do you think anybody would like to join us on September 28th, the Saturday, to see it in person?
Not putting you on the spot, no pressure.
And Terry and Peter, if you have anything else you want in closing, feel free.
Yeah, hey, I'll add something. I think it's really important that this is really an initial presentation, and there's a lot more to discuss, but it's really preliminary what we're looking at. I think it's important that we really look at regenerative communities going into the future and knowing what's happening in community. And so it is, and what Noam said, he covered that off really well, because there's a lot to uncover, there's a lot to unpack, and we really want to get to know who people are. And moving forward, our vision is strong, growing communities worldwide, and the vision's very big. So we're looking for people who are open-minded, who have big visions, easy to get along with, who want to grow spiritually, who want to grow as a community and want to live upright. We live by two main themes: do no harm and do what you say you're going to do. So we like to live by that. And by all means, anybody wants to speak to us at any time, you could reach us through Scott or through Noam, and love to see people here on the 28th.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yes, thank you everybody for taking time out of your evening. Noam, Terry and Peter, Therese and Michael, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the leap of faith to see what new opportunities are occurring in the world. And I truly believe that this is one of them. You know, we're at the precipice right now of really transforming this opportunity and carry the baton over to, the next group of people. Yes, Therese, feel free to unmute yourself. You can hit spacebar.
There we go. It's like I've never been on Zoom before, and I do it every day. I'm curious. I mean, I've been in co-housing communities before. Right now, I'm in a community home. So we have 4 different. Well, we're building right now, so there will be 4 housemates sharing a home in Nelson, and eventually, this is our vision, is to grow into a community. And my biggest thing is access. So 2 of my family members don't drive, and so they use bikes, and so it's a challenge when it's an hour away from the city. But whatever, it's a beautiful property. So I was curious, Terry and Peter, were you like, do you stay on the property or do you have is life calling you elsewhere? Like, what's your involvement with it?
Well, that's a big question. Of course, we're going to be on the property until we see the vision come through, and we're always going to be part of the project. Both Terry and I come from the alternative health field. That's our passion. We have connections in other parts to start connecting communities globally. So that's where the big vision comes in. How do we start interconnecting globally in the transformation of this planet? So that again that's why I said it's just a big question, but it's a great question. So on, off, but we'll be here as long as we need to give direction and finding other strong people and strong leadership. And that's going to take development.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've had to develop ourselves, and it's, as you know, it's doing the inner work. So people have to do the inner work. We don't do the inner work, these communities will not work.
Right.
Yeah. And further to that, we do plan on building ourselves a little cabin or a little tiny. We do. Like we never imagined being in this giant castle ourselves. We always said this is not about us living in this castle and growing old. It is about a purpose. The idea was for a wellness healing center, and we just went for it. But we also knew in order for us to start facilitating, you know, this place to do what it's supposed to do, and that is to be a place for healers to come and use the space for anybody, for practitioners, for anybody, educators, people that want to have a beautiful place to do their service. It's an opportunity for each and every one of us to build our own businesses. We're all in these, you know, unique do-it-yourself, real like healing business, or we're in the yoga movement, or we're, you know, we're healing, everybody's healing one another. And we've, you know, since COVID, we were forced to be at home, and we became quite resourceful in learning the tools that it's going to take to develop our business, whether it's on Zoom. And so through that, Peter and I are going, but wait, we still need that connection with people. And that's what the castle is about. So Peter and I, we plan on being here consciously all times. But to live in the castle, we would never be able to operate the castle in what its purpose is. So we knew one day we're going to have our own little tiny house or cabin. But right now we have a calling to go outside of Canada to keep moving this template. And we're really trying to crystallize it with, you know, more of the wellness renaissance of people that are moving towards that lifestyle. So this is a good time to get to know people and what their needs are. And so that's what we're doing. We're getting our feelers out. But
I think there's another thing here that's also important that wasn't mentioned, but you gave you a bit of a clue there. By us not being in here, there's a huge opportunity for this community to live on here and see a revenue stream.
Yeah.
That all the food is in the regenerative community that feeds back to the people. And there's also another opportunity to generate revenue because it's all about sustainability. There's also another opportunity for people to be developed into trustees of land developments. We have been talking to Scott about it because we have a lot of other properties where people are coming to us and understand what we want to develop, and they like the concept. This will be basically also a prototype for other developments like this. So in growing and healthy growing anywhere, we've always been nomads. We've never stayed still. We should be moving along. As we build these communities, we can move to another community. Could be in Costa Rica or Ecuador or Mexico or United States. So that's the fun part about it, is really thinking outside the box and seeing the big vision.
yeah,
Quick, long-winded, but
home is where the wellness is, Teresa. That's how we see life. A very holistic approach. Yeah. So a fairly loaded answer, but it's complex. We're just really trying to unfold ourselves and open up pathways and really start uniting people and really building our collective. We have to start looking that way. You know that, you're living that way now. Yeah,
Thanks for the question.
thank you. I mean, it's an
Thank you.
important question. Yeah, there you go.
So sorry, I have to go. I'm being called to by my family, but nice
Thanks,
meeting
Pat.
you. Please do reach out with any additional questions. And
Okay,
Thank you so much, Noam.
That's a cute cat.
who's your cat's name?
Pumpkin says hi. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Noam.
Okay. Thank you.
It's great.
Bye.
This is what happens when we all work from home. It's beautiful.
Have a good one. Thanks for being on, Noam.
Thank you very much, Noam. Appreciate your energy.
Why am I not seeing the exit button today? There it is. They changed it. It's a new picture.
There we go. Well, yeah, that feels like a wrap. Anyone, unless there's anyone else that wants to speak to any comments or questions. I felt like that was very thorough. And again, I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their evening.
Our pleasure. Thank you for
you.
having this, and we look forward to doing this again and speaking to more people.
And thank you for those that came and showed up, and really nice to connect and meet you and feel you, your energy, and we see you and we're all here for you and we want to support this movement. Let's do it.
Amen. Great. Well, cheers, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And we will be sending a follow-up email, just so you know, with future links and the next actionable steps for either viewing in person or just the next meeting. So please look at your inbox for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.